Their coach, Mike McDaniel, however, has a very clear message. He does not want his players worried about that narrative.
I instructed the players to anything other than concerning yourself with the next opponent, which for us is the Dallas Cowboys, and any other narrative that has to do with good teams. I gave them the clearance to tell all members of the media to, with all due respect, F off. With all due respect.
I love that guy. Oh, my God. I love that guy. And it is a great message. But the reality is the questions are legitimate. The Dolphins have not beaten when they've had opportunities against the teams we consider to be the better teams in the league this year. They haven't won. It doesn't mean they aren't good, but the fact is the fact. How significant is it?
It matters. We can't say it matters for the Dallas Cowboys and not say it matters for the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins are a good football team. I don't know if they've proven to be a great football team yet this year. Now, they've had stretches where they play great, and they've got two guys that are in the MVP conversation, both in Tyreek Hill and Tua Tagovailoa. Tyreek's still searching for 2,000 yards this season. This offense, when it is on schedule, as explosive, dynamic, and difficult to stop as anybody in the NFL. When it's off schedule, it's a complete 180. This defense, when they get into those pass situations and they can suffocate, they're suffocating. When you can control the tempo, they're a little bit more vulnerable. That's the mark of a good football team, not great.
I can't imagine any team has a tougher stretch to finish their season than they do. They've got Dallas this week, then they've got Baltimore, then they've got Buffalo, and there is a fairly likely scenario, I think, in which that last game of the season in Miami will be for the division between the Bills and the Dolphins. What are you seeing in Miami?
That would be Miami's worst nightmare. That would be Miami's worst nightmare, and I think it's going to come to fruition. I think that last week against the Buffalo Bills is going to come down to the division title. And we see these things happen every year where a team latter part of the season, all of a sudden you see that momentum really going. Buffalo's that team. Buffalo is literally that team that's like almost like a runaway locomotive right now. No one wants to play them. Miami is what I call a fun team. They're fun. Like, I'm eating candy, I'm watching. They're fun to watch and everything. But Buffalo is a team that's like, they're scary because it seems like they've stabilized the defense. Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator, has really done a great job implementing James Cook, who's been a focal point in the offense. And then you got the man Josh Allen, who can literally take over a game at any point. Who wants to face that?
No, that's the point. And they have two very winnable games before that final showdown. They have the Chargers and the Patriots. They got through the tough part of their schedule. While the Dolphins, they do have something to prove. You live down there in Boca Raton. Tell me what you're seeing in these Dolphins.
They could run the ball. A lot of people give them credit for. And, we talk a lot about Tua, Tyreek Hill, and that's all great. But when they can run the ball the way they have, that perimeter run game, the outside zone with Raheem Mostert, that makes them almost unstoppable. And Dan did a great job of breaking that down earlier. And that's why it's so important in this game, Greeny. If Dallas doesn't stop the run and score early on offense, this really plays well in Miami's favor.
These games are huge. These next three games are huge for Miami. You can make the case that reasonably they can lose all three.
Yeah, sure.
Which would be a shocking fall. If they somehow can beat the Dallas Cowboys this weekend, then in many ways it sets up what potentially would be for the 1 seed against Baltimore on the road next week, I think on New Year's Eve night, which would be spectacular for the Dolphins, because then week 18 is a little bit of a moot point, because if they somehow can win these next two games, then Buffalo's on the outside looking in, and Miami's sitting there saying, we could control the 1 seed and we could control, obviously, winning the AFC East.
Yeah, Greeny, here's where they deserve credit. They played the Jets last week, and what the Jets do still have is a great front seven.
Without Tyreek.
Yeah, and Miami had not their starting center, their right guard, their backup center. They signed on Wednesday, and they only won 30-0. That was a game that the Jets, their front seven, should have controlled the game. And with Miami, with two offensive linemen out, still scored 30.
Miami should win the game this weekend. It is advantage Miami. They're at home. They do things on offense that Dallas significantly struggles with on defense.
The one thing I will say about that game, yes, the score was 30-0, but that should not fool you. It was not nearly that close. The game was not nearly as competitive as that final score would make it sound. Bold predictions for a big weekend in the NFL. D. Wood, give me something bold.
How about the New York Football Giants beating the Philadelphia Eagles?
Oh
my God.
Because you're like, I need a bounce back. I need a bounce back from the G-men after what happened down there in New Orleans. And I think, listen, as much as we've been talking about Philadelphia and all their vulnerabilities, I think my man, Tommy DeVito, my man, I think he comes back and gives them boys the business, man. Come on.
Things will get ugly in Philly.
Danny, give me a bold prediction.
Bold prediction, Matthew Stafford throws for 3 touchdowns tonight on Thursday Night Football versus the New Orleans Saints. Talked about Kyron Williams in their run game and how good Puka, Nakua, and Cooper Kupp are with the blocking. But there is no quarterback in football throwing the ball better than Matthew Stafford. He is so hot right now. 3 touchdowns tonight in a Rams win.
You're 100% right. No one is talking about the Rams or how well Stafford is playing. Keep an eye on them tonight. Mike T, give me a bold prediction.
The Dallas Cowboys are going to win 35-28. Reedy, you may not know this, but somebody was dumb enough last week to say that the Cowboys weren't going to punt against Buffalo. It wasn't Dan, by the way, that said that.
Of course not.
Yeah, but we went into that game saying how great Dak Prescott was playing. Dallas's offense is going to bounce back. That's going to help Dallas's pass rush. They're going to win on the road.
I'll give everybody at home just a little peek behind the curtain. Look, we all sit up here, we make predictions, we hope that they're right. Like anyone else, sometimes they're wrong. As that game was going the way it was going, I could not stop thinking about you, Mike. I was like, oh my goodness. Because we've all been there. Like, God bless you, Josh Allen. Ever since I jumped on the bandwagon, you're the best player in the NFL. It's working out very well for me. That said, let's talk about this game here.
Yeah.
We just talked about it from the Miami side of things. Let's talk about it from the Dallas side of things. They lost last week because they couldn't stop the run against Buffalo. Can Miami do the same thing to them?
Absolutely. Mike McDaniel, 2 years ago when he was coaching with the San Francisco 49ers, coached against, in many ways, this Dallas Cowboys defense, and it was very clear of like how he wanted to try and attack that. Respect for the aggression. He's going to use it against you. They're going to do toss counter. So one thing with toss is you get the defense flowing from one side of the field all the way to the other. And then you motion that fullback as a lead guy and wrap him back around where he comes from. Watch the second level for Dallas' defense. You're trying to get them to flow one way, and you design the cutback. That is not vision from the back. That is a designed cutback. Number 2, you try to take the flow and kind of build it into your pass game as well. Ball fake one way. Maybe this is the pistol or the shotgun for Tua, and you have a man-beating route, a crosser versus man coverage. Look at the defense. You're trying to get that defense's speed and aggression and use it against them to create easy throws for your quarterback. And then the last thing is the perimeter screen game. If you go back to the Jets game last week, respect for the defensive line, perimeter screen galore to start the game. It's going to be the same thing. You're going to get spread 5 wide, make the defense cover sideline to sideline, anticipate some form of a pressure, and then you throw away from it. If this is Tyreek, this is a touchdown this weekend. Mike McDaniel is very equipped to understand in a respectful way how to attack this Dallas defense. You're going to see a ton of motion at the snap. Something Miami does more than anybody, something that the Dallas Cowboys defense struggles with immensely. You're going to see a ton of man coverage. No quarterback in the league guts man coverage more than Tua Tagovailoa, and you will see a ton of runs to the left side of that formation. Why? Buffalo, who we all know dominated in the run game last week, is the number 1 run team when it comes to running the ball to the left of our offense. Number 2, the Miami Dolphins.
Ooh. So that the strength there seems to line up.
This is strength on
again.
weakness.
And we don't have a defensive player on our set today, but Marcus, when he was here yesterday, was making the point. No one's calling the Cowboys soft. That's not what this is. It is about every team has a strength and a weakness. And what their weakness is plays directly into, or I guess in this case, plays directly out of what the opposing team's strength is. So how do they stop it? If you're the Cowboys and you don't go up 14-0 in this game, which you can't count on, what does their defense need to do so that all those things Dan just so perfectly showed us don't wind up happening to them again?
Yeah, listen, I always said, my saying has always been you got to earn the right to rush the passer, right? And it starts on early downs for the Dallas Cowboys. What you're going to have to do, Dallas is kind of light on the defensive side because they're so fast. That's what everything is predicated on is speed, and you know teams know how to finesse that type of defense. I think you got to do some run blitzes, stuff like that, to kind of fill in some of these gaps that you leave uncovered because you're constantly moving around on the defensive side of the football. most importantly, they got to get to a situation where they're able to rush the passer. You got to stop the run on first and second down. You got to somehow get Miami behind the sticks.
Yeah.
That's easier said than done, but you got to do that.
I think Mike McDaniel takes the defensive line out of the game.
What does that mean?
Early downs, you're going to see tons of motion, tons of reverses, tons of over-aggressive things from the defense, tons of perimeter screens.
That's what you do.
He is
What
gonna
you do.
minimize that group.
And what Dan is talking about is the way when you talk about defensive lines, you want to get them tired. The one thing you want to do with a defensive line, get them running sideline to sideline and wear them down. Because guess what? When those guys got to run sideline to sideline, guess what they can't do? Right. They can't rush the passer.
Right.
So that's what Dan is talking about with the Miami Dolphins.
I think the key is Stephon Gilmore. We go back to the Philly game. He made some big tackles in space against A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. And to D-Wood's point, what's Dan Quinn going to have to do? Commit more to the run game, Greeny. They're going to have to hold up on the back end, which is hard to do with Waddle, assuming that Tyreek Hill.
That's going to be tough.
But if Stephon Gilmore plays the way he did against the Eagles, he does on Sunday, that is going to be a big impact.
So I want to translate this for people who are in their fantasy playoffs and do other sorts of gambling and fantasy-related questions. I feel like you're forecasting a very big day for the Dolphins, but I'm trying to gauge if you're telling me Mostert and Achane are going to go nuts or Tyreek and Waddle are going to go nuts.
How you want it? That's the unknown. If they are going to do what Mike T is kind of intimating, like, hey, you're going to have to put more bodies down at the line of scrimmage.
Then Tyreek, right?
Good luck with that.
It'll be night-night Irene with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Now, if they're going to try to play with some coverage commitment, it's going to be a heavy Mostert, heavy Achane game when it comes to their diversity in the run.
Dan, what you're minimizing, though, is what can Dallas do really well? They can rush the passer. So even if they go 8-man spacing, yeah, I'm sure Miami's going to hit some home runs, but I'm sure Dallas is going to get home a couple times too.
No, I have a ton of respect for the Dallas Cowboys pass rush. I've called it for the last 3 years. Their third down pass rush is the best play in football.